and get started by sharing some information about technical aspects to FormSite. So here, this big blue rectangle says you can create an account to return to your saved work. This is the #1 question that we get from folks using our applications. You are not required to create a login, and you can submit the form without one. So, if you're like me and you generally take all the questions, copy them into a Word document and work on them there, and you can upload, all the answers and documents in one go, feel free to skip this save and return option and do that. But do note that it does, it would potentially mean that your work is lost if something were to happen. If you do choose to use this save and return function, you are required to create a new login for each application. So that means that if you applied with us last year and had a account, you will have to create a new user for this form if you'd like to use that. I'm just going to quickly show you what that means. So these are the 2 options you get. So for each form, you will have to create a new user. Fortunately, that's just how FormSite is. Everything else is pretty straightforward, so we tend to like it for that. But this one function is a little bit odd in that way. You are able to use the same login for each form. So if there's one that you just want to stick, are always here to provide technical assistance. As I mentioned, our email address is pretty easy to remember. It's just artsboard@milwaukee.gov, artsboard@milwaukee.gov, and that reaches myself and Terry Grody, and we are usually pretty quick at responding, whether it's a technical issue or if you have a question on, eligibility, or, just want to chat about a project. We're always available to assist you in that way. This year, the application is due Monday, March 7th at 11:59 p.m. We do encourage you to get started with this application the week before, as we won't necessarily be able to provide direct assistance. We will always do our best, but if you wait until the last minute, it does get a little bit tricky with providing that, especially after work hours on March 7th. So we will always do our best, but we just like to remind you, get in there, work out any issues that you might have with the system, get your login all set, and be ready to go for that deadline of Monday, March 7th at 11:59 p.m. We also want to just make sure everyone knows, last year was our first year using FormSite, and so we did allow for a grace period of a week if any application materials were missing or incomplete. That was on an exception basis, and we haven't offered that in the past, and we are returning to that strict deadline again this year. So just to emphasize this, I promise I'll stop saying it soon, but we really do encourage you to get into the application and, share with us any concerns or any questions you might have the week before the application is due, so that we can make sure that, that we're on the same page as far as what documents are needed. So moving on to the eligibility section. And again, there's lots of great information here. I'm not going to read through it all, but lots of things to just direct you to kind of get you in the right mindset to apply for the grant. A little bit more information about the Arts Board as well. So on eligibility, there are some main eligibility criteria that applicants must apply to applicants. So, of course, the #1 is that your application must be received before the deadline. That is pretty important this year. Your organization must be a nonprofit, tax-exempt 501c3 organization for at least 2 years before the deadline. So that means you must be have received that before March 7th, 2022, or on or before March 7th, 2022. Your organization must have a physical administrative office located in the city of Milwaukee, and a PO box does not count as a physical administrative office. Unfortunately, this does leave out some of our arts programming that occurs in the city of Milwaukee, but we do have to sort of draw that line somewhere, and that is where our finance and administration department feels comfortable with adhering to. So in addition, an organization or a unit, a discrete unit of your organization must have the sole mission of public presentation or production of arts programming for the larger community. If it is a unit of your organization, then that unit must have a discrete, must be a discrete entity with a separate board, mission statement, and budget. And lastly, if you received a sustaining grant in 2021, you must have completed your interim report for that grant. And that is this piece here. If you have any outstanding reports, you may not apply. So I think there's only a handful of organizations that haven't submitted their interim report yet, but please do so. All right, so again, these sections, there's a lot of great information here, overview of the program, application deadline, our review process. I'm not going to go into detail about this because it is all available on the application itself. But something that did change this year is the funding process. So the amount of your grant this year, actually, let me start with, so last year we awarded all eligible applications an equal amount of our total funding pool. This year, the Arts Board decided to award based on merit until our total funds are depleted. So the way that will work is applications will be considered all together, scored all together by our review panel, and then ranked based on those scores. Then we will make awards, in order of those rankings based on your budget. So organizations with a budget under $100,000 would be eligible for a $3,000 grant. Organizations with a budget over $100,000 will be eligible for a $6,000 grant. And again, these decisions were made by the Arts Board. And, it's as we continue with the sustaining grant fund, we're looking for ways to make those funds most impactful while also understanding that we do have limited funds to award. And for clarification purposes, there are a few different budget amounts that are asked for. And so I'm just going to scroll down the application here. Again, skipping over some important information that you can read and let us know if you have questions on general information. This is all exactly the same as last year and pretty straightforward. Last completed fiscal year, that would be these sections here, and then projected information for your current fiscal year. This section, this question right here, projected income for current fiscal year, is mainly what we'll be basing those award groupings on. So again, under 100,000, you'd be eligible for 3,000. Over 100,000, you'll be eligible for 6,000. So this is what we'll base that on, but we will also confirm that information with the budget that you upload at the end, and I will speak to that in a few minutes. So I mentioned the scoring that the review panel will do, and those scores will largely be based on your information provided in these narrative questions. We direct our review panel to consider only the information that you provide in your application and not bring in any existing or outside knowledge on organizations. And so it is really important that you paint a very full picture of that. There is not a word count limit, so do be brief for the sake of our review panel members, but also make sure that your answers are thorough and really elaborate on what work your organization is doing. Our main question, and the one that will be weighted the most, is this first one, and that speaks to how your organization works towards those purposes of the Milwaukee Arts Board, and that comes directly from our Code of Ordinance. So, it's listed here. It's listed at the top of the application, and I'd be happy to send anyone who's interested, a copy of the Code of Ordinance itself that expands a little bit more on the purpose of the Arts Board. Then the next question, we ask you to let us know, how you plan to evaluate how you're achieving those goals. It would be great if you can include how the methods of evaluation that you will use for that programming, for your evaluation of the programming. And then, it's also important that the tax dollars that the Milwaukee Arts Board gets from the city budget are going directly to benefit the residents of the city of Milwaukee. And so we do ask you to speak to how your programming will benefit the city of Milwaukee and its residents. And then lastly, we ask you to describe how the funds will be used. Since this is a sustaining grant, you can be, they can be applied to a relatively broad amount of expenses that are again listed here and then up at the top as far as what the Arts Board can fund. Right, and I'm trusting that if anyone has a question, they'll unmute themselves and let me know or raise their hand, but we are moving right along to the required materials section. So this is the documentation that we need from you, and it is rather explicit. So I'm going to go through step by step each document that we'll need from you and explain what we need, why we need it, and then a little bit about how to upload that. So first is a list of your current board of directors that includes the officers and their business affiliations. So of course, this is asked for in order to make sure that your organization is functioning, as it should with a board of directors, and it's also used to watch for conflicts of interest. It is important that you include, those officers and their business affiliations in that. And then we ask here that that's uploaded as a PDF or doc. And all you have to do is methods of assistance to get those documents uploaded for you. So moving on, we ask for your 990, so your most recently completed 990. Sometimes there's issues that prevent the 990 from being your most recently completed fiscal year. And if that's the case, we will follow up with you and get some information if it's a rather old 990. But the 990 is really to show that you are in current good standing with the IRS and your 501c3 determination is current. One note about that, so any organization, any nonprofit organization whose annual gross receipt is under $50,000 only has to submit a 990N, that postcard, and so a copy of that is definitely acceptable for those organizations with a budget under $50,000. We're more, oh, I see, okay, we've got a question in the chat. So 990 form, the whole thing, 16 pages or just the top page. So summary pages are fine as long as it has, the information saying, it's submitted and, your organization information is on that page. I believe the summary pages would be the top page, but David, if you want to send me what you have as far as the top page, I can let you know. But yes, that will be just the summary pages is what we need. Hope that answered your question. Let me know if it didn't. And, this most likely will be in PDF form, but it will allow you to upload some other options, but chances are it will be in PDF. And there is just one document that can be uploaded for this one as well, since we're just asking for one document there. So next, and of course, 990, why would we want that? I think I mentioned used to determine that you are currently determined as a 501c3 nonprofit with the IRS. So your annual financial statement for the most recently completed fiscal year. This is something that we had quite a few issues with last year. We are asking for a financial statement that includes a profit and loss statement and a balance sheet. I believe that's pretty typical, something that, you could have your CPA, your accountant assist you with, but just, a brief overview. Profit and loss should include your, revenue, your income, which is the profit, and your expenses in there as well. And then also a balance sheet, which shows any assets that you have, any debts that you have. So please let us know if you're not sure about your document. We can confirm if it's what we need or not. And your accountant, or, something that information is relatively available on the internet as well. But we are always available to answer that for you. And we use this and the next section, the organizational operating budget, to determine the financial health of your organization, which will be one of the pieces that your application is scored on, your organizational feasibility. Organizational budget, operating budget for current fiscal year. Again, we understand that this will be projected since the year is still happening, and we will confirm that the information that you provided in that section up top matches this upload here to determine which budget grouping your application will be funded under. Lastly, we ask for your IRS letter of tax determination, articles of incorporation, and bylaws. We are asking for all three of those documents. And if you applied with us last year, we should have those on file. You should have them on file as well. We're asking that you re-upload them for us, just to make everything even and fair. If you're having a hard time finding that copy, let us know and we can see how we can help you with that. And here you have a number of options as far as what type of file to upload. Chances are it will be in PDF form. You're able to upload 1 to 3 documents depending on how your files are organized. If they're combined all into one document, then just uploading that one document will satisfy the requirements. If you have them as 3 separate documents, that's fine as well. You will be able to upload all 3 of those. Right, and then the last item that we ask of you is your board authorization, assuring that the information is true and correct to the best of their knowledge. So for this, we ask that you get a board officer signature, so either the president, vice president, secretary, or treasurer of your board to sign on to this statement up above, certifying that the information is true and correct to the best of their knowledge. And for this section, we do ask for a physical signature, which to us means that it's not a typed signature. We understand that this application is electronic, and so, of course, you will need to in some way make it electronic, but we just ask that it not be a typed signature. So at some point, someone signed their name, and that's what you're uploading there. So that is the application. As you see, we've reached the end here. We did set up a submission confirmation. So when you do get to the point where you are, Susie, an e-signature drawn with a mouse? Yes, I think a mouse is a pen these days. So I think that should be fine. We just don't want it to be typed. That answers your question. I know it's sort of a tricky gray area, but we just don't want a typed signature. There's lots of ways to get a drawn or electronically signed signature these days, so we appreciate that greatly. So back to the submission confirmation. So when you submit your application, the contact person from the application, which is a field all the way up at the top here, pardon my quick scrolling. So this email address will receive that submission confirmation, which will include a PDF of your completed application. We will do our best to review applications that are submitted on March 4th or earlier to let you know if there's any issues, anything incomplete or missing. We will also do our best to do that on Monday, but we really do encourage you to get your application materials together and submitted on the 4th. Maybe give yourself a false deadline of the 4th so that we can make sure that everything is in order for your application to be considered by our review panel. We want your application to be as possible in that way. So for you to review, and should you have any questions before the deadline, please reach out to us, artsboard@milwaukee.gov. I will stop talking and see if anyone has any questions at this point. Wow. All right. Well, that is all I have for you. You're very welcome, Elliot. I will stay on if anyone wants to ask any further questions. Confirm any documents, whatever you need, I'll be here, but feel free to sign off. Have a great rest of your day, and we look forward to receiving your applications. I'm also going to stop the recording now, but I'll stay on to answer questions.